G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome to Gaijin's April Fool's event. Although it wasn't much of an April Fool's on this one, more something much more intriguing. For those of you who missed the event, this year Gaijin introduced a test event for what they called Rank 9. This was modern main battle tanks and helicopters on desert maps that already exist in War Thunder, plus one new map unique to the event, made to emulate the terrain of the Middle East. Only two nations took part in this event. It was Germany versus Russia. Russia brought the T-90A, the ZSU 23-4, and the Mi-35, which is a rename of the Mi-24 Hind. Most likely renamed for legal reasons. From the German side, we saw the Flak Panzer Gepard, the GM-64, again a rename of an Apache Longbow attack helicopter, and of course what we're driving today, the Leopard 2A5. Now today's battle I'm going to be focusing mainly on the A5 and this particular battle, which was fantastic fun. I am going to do another video on the helicopters because I feel they need a video of their own. And there's a T-90, one shot in, he bounces it off the front plate, aim for the lower plate, one shot in, and boom, there's my first kill of the match. So straight up, first thing I'm going to say is I had fantastic fun in this event. This was an amazing event to play. One of the major parts about it was the spawn system for the event. Now, not too long ago I did a video fixing ground forces where I was talking about spawn mechanics and things that I thought should have been done. There was almost a variation of what I was talking about in that video in play for this particular event. Vehicles had no spawn costs. You could deploy the Leopard or the Gepard as often as you wanted. However, there was a spawn cost for deploying the helicopters, 900 points each, to prevent you from spawning attack helicopters all over the battlefield. And this was actually important because I discovered during one of the matches that you could actually cap in helicopters. Not sure if it was intentional or not, but it did actually work. But anyways, one of the first things we should probably talk about is why this event come into play. Is it Gaijin looking to expand into other areas, into more modern combat? Well, in my opinion, yeah, that's most certainly a thing. And the timing actually makes sense. For those of you who have been watching this type of game, War Thunder, World of Tanks, and most importantly here, Armoured Warfare, will know that Armoured Warfare has recently had a few problems. Obsidian, the developer of Armoured Warfare, which up until this point was the only one of sort of this variety of game that featured modern main battle tanks, recently had a bit of a falling out with the Russian publisher and co-developer Mk.II. Now, without going into too many of the known details, a large amount of the player base is not particularly happy about what's going on there at the moment, which means there is a large number of players looking for this kind of a game that currently don't have a main battle tank game to play, a modern ground combat game to play. And suddenly Gaijin throws in an event which is so well polished and works so well within Gaijin's mechanics, and it really does. This spawn system coupled with these tanks was probably, oh hang on, oh he felt that, was probably the best showcase of how Gaijin's ground forces could potentially work with a few slight mechanics adjustments that I've ever seen in forever. And I wasn't alone in thinking this. I actually have a large number of subscribers, some of you may be in this particular category, that have sort of continued to follow War Thunder but no longer play the game for various reasons, who I speak to regularly on my Discord, who came back to play this event and couldn't stop playing it. They absolutely loved everything they encountered about it. In my opinion, this is a bold play by Gaijin, and it is done so well. If they introduce this as a game mode, it would get people to play. But of course, how to bring them in? Now, for those watching the match at the moment, I've managed to secure the B point, I'm backing around, and I'm trying to take the unsecured C point at this time, while still leaving myself in a position to defend B, because I was really the only one doing it. But anyways, how to bring this in, because you can't just drop a rank 6 and bring modern main battle tanks like the Leopard 2 into the game. I mean, the Leopard 2's main gun, the L44 Rheinmetall 120mm smoothbore gun, its primary ammunition, which you can see me firing here, is the DM53 shell. Now, I didn't catch the penetrations assigned by Gaijin, but in real life this has around 750mm of penetration against rolled homogeneous armor at 2,000 meters. To give you an idea on the penetration value on this thing could punch a hole in the front of a mouse, penetrate all of the mechanical lines inside of the mouse and all of the metal walls inside of it, penetrate the firewall into the engine bay, hole the engine in the mouse from end to end and still have enough penetration to blow a hole the size of your fist out of the rear armour of the mouse. And it can do that from 2 kilometers away or beyond. And that's not to mention that modern composite armour and reactive armour that these tanks use in order to survive, which was, as I understand it, at least partially modelled in this event, which is why you could take some hits and wouldn't get penetrated, would effectively render these tanks immune to any incoming fire from anything that currently exists in War Thunder. So yeah, it's not something you could put into a match with most of the vehicles that currently exist in War Thunder, outside of a very select few. Tanks such as the Leopard self-propelled anti-aircraft gun, which was present in the event and worked exceptionally well as helicopter defense, that would work, and perhaps some of the ATGMs. Main battle tanks that exist currently in War Thunder, I don't think a Leopard 1 would be able to compete against these vehicles, to be perfectly honest, but that's just my opinion. Some people may argue against that. But regardless, in my opinion, that's not something that Gaijin should be trying anyway. Now, I wouldn't say put these into an event, but Gaijin has a bit of an opportunity here. If they really are making a play for the Armoured Warfare player base, and at the same time trying to expand what War Thunder is doing and give them new options, because let's face it, at this point in time, there isn't a whole lot of tanks and aircraft that could be put into War Thunder that would really be much different to what we already have available in War Thunder. But modern combat opens up some entirely new doors, and modern helicopter combat as a support for ground forces works really well together and opens up some massive options for them as developers. What I would actually like to see Gaijin do if they chose to implement this not as an event but as an official tech tree, would be to implement it as an entirely new tech tree. So, let's say you're a new War Thunder player, you're just starting to play the game now. Your options to start playing currently as they stand at this moment are the options between ground forces and air forces and one of the 5 nations, but you will always start in very early World War II technology or pre-war technology, biplanes and your very early tanks. Those are your choices as a player. As a second tech tree, a new player would have the option to start grinding straight into what would be the reserves for a modern battle tank era of vehicles. These possibly could include things like the Leopard 1, and eventually build up to a rank 5 or really actually modern main battle tanks. Less vehicles were developed, probably would only go 2, maybe 3 ranks up until things like the Leopard 2, the Abrams, and so on. And these would represent the top vehicles that would be in a completely separate tree. Instead of having aircraft in this tree, you would have access to helicopters, and you would have things like the Tiger attack helicopter, you would have things like the Apache, you would have things like the Hind, that could be researched in the same way that aircraft are researched in War Thunder, and it would be an independent section of the game. This means that players only interested in modern main battle tank combat would be able to entirely skip the World War II portion of the game and go straight through to the modern era of combat, the modern tech tree, and start playing there as their first part, and then come back and unlock the World War II stuff later if they chose to. Likewise, it gives a second research option for the players existing in the game. Let's say you've been playing for a while and you're up to about rank 3 in ground forces, but you really want to play something bigger and faster, something modern main battle tank era. Well, you've got a lot of research you need to do to get your way to rank 5, but you could just jump down and start playing the reserves for what would be rank 6, or the new tech tree, whichever way they wanted to name it, and start playing your way through those vehicles as well, giving you an option to bounce back and forth and play whatever era you actually chose to. And likewise for those who are not interested in the modern main battle tank era of combat, well, they can simply choose not to research the tree if they weren't interested in what they found there. In my opinion, running the research trees in this way would open up the doors for a larger number of people wanting this kind of combat to be able to get in, because let's be perfectly honest, look at the War Thunder ground tech trees and imagine just for a second that if you wanted to drive a Leopard 2, you had to grind through everything all the way to the Leopard A1, and then possibly through a series of tanks that follow it in order to get access to the Leopard 2. Yeah, if you're coming into War Thunder looking for modern combat and you see you've got to go through that much, you're probably not going to pick up the game. But if you could come in and just jump straight into the modern tech tree and start grinding towards the vehicles, with the option to go back and pick up all the World War II stuff later on if you wanted to, well, that's going to be appealing. Players like options, and that gives a lot of options, a lot of choice to the individual player on how exactly they want to progress through the game. And that's not just to mention that, well, War Thunder is already rather unique in the way it does its trees. It has access to aircraft, tanks, and very soon to be boats, all lined up as 3 separate tech trees that a player can choose to research at will. If you were to double that and have 2 sets of tech trees, well, I just can't think of anybody else that's doing anything like that. That's a hell of a lot of choice in the hands of a player for them to decide how they want to progress through the game, how they want to play, and what they want to do. Oh, poor Hind flared a little bit too hard there. So, anyways, besides the amazing tanks, the amazing gameplay, the awesome spawn system that I really hope is introduced elsewhere in Ground Forces. I mean, these battles lasted right till the end of the ticket counters every single time. There was no vehicle outs because there couldn't be. Battles over the cap circles were near constant all the time, with the players who brought on the best tactics to the battlefield and reinforced in the right areas after dying, always being the teams that won. Spawn camping was extremely rare inside of the match. There were some people that tried it, but there was so much risk of a player simply spawning in a new fresh main battle tank and blowing a hole straight through you while you were trying to camp, that after a couple of matches, people sort of seemed to stop doing it and started focusing on those objective points as they were the only way or the most efficient way to win the match. Another thing that was in, I didn't actually use it in this battle, I didn't feel the need to, but you would have seen it popping up around the outsides, the smoke. Smoke launchers were fully functional in this event and they worked fantastically. Now, the one thing I did want to test with smoke that I didn't have an opportunity to was to actually see whether or not the smoke rendered in ultra low graphics mode. Now, I have been told by some of my subscribers that it did, but as I said, I didn't have a chance to test it myself. If it did, this is fantastic news, and smoke launchers need to be implemented into the main game as soon as possible. The smoke made it so much better moving around the battlefield. If you ran into an area where you knew there was going to be somebody covering it, but if you wanted to defend a cap circle, you had to cross. Deploying smoke quickly and then using the smoke to cover your movements from A to B, it completely changed the dynamic of the battlefield. It was then possible to move into positions that would previously not have been an option, to be able to fight and defend against enemies that, under the normal gameplay standards of War Thunder Ground Forces, would have been able to easily kill you. If they introduce smoke alone out of this event, I will be happy with War Thunder Ground Forces. If they can introduce the rest of this event into something that is here and available to us all the time outside an event, I will be ecstatic. And at this point, with 2 bases held for almost the entirety of this match, the 3rd base currently being capped and the enemy team currently being held in place by, if you'll notice looking at the map, a series of forces just on their side of the cap circles, not in their spawn, this match comes to a close. So, overall, not a bad match, but the results of the match aren't hugely important here. This was an event after all. There was no RP to grind, there were no credits to be earned. This was just about the fun and getting to play with some toys that we never got to see or never had a chance to play with before. And it was hugely, hugely fun. And you know what's funny? If you would ask me just a couple of weeks ago if I thought it was a good idea for Gaijin to add modern main battle tanks to War Thunder, I would have said absolutely not. And I want to apologise for that, because this was simply the best fun that I have had in War Thunder Ground Forces in months. I really hope Gaijin do continue with this idea and really do add it to the game. I would love to see it implemented as a second tree, as I said, but really in any way, shape or form, I would love to see these vehicles in game. I look forward in the future having the opportunity to drive the Abrams, or the Japanese Type 10, or the Challenger 2. This event was way too much fun to just remain an April Fool's event. Anyways, ladies and gents, hope you enjoyed the video and thank you very much for watching. As I said, there will be a video up in the next few days in regards to helicopters. I did quite a lot of testing there, including joystick flight. I think you'll be interested in some of the results. Until then, remember to click that like button and subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, drive smart, drive safe, and I will catch you on the battlefield.